So I learned recently that apparently summer in San Diego starts in August and goes until October, and then fall starts in October, and winter doesn't really start until the next year, which, after living in perpetual summer, expecting the regular 4 seasons at their predicted times, is very much throwing me off. But hi everyone, today we are here to talk about the books I want to finish before the end of the year. These are all books that I own currently physically. There is a little bit of rhyme and reason to why I want to read these books specifically, so we'll go into it, but there's no general trend. But without further ado, let's just jump into what I want to read before the end of this year. So the first book that I want to read is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Davos. This is a translated YA fantasy, I believe. I think it's translated. And I don't know much about this besides that it is kind of like high fantasy, fun, YA, the classic vibes. My friend Sel from On the Booksell, they recommended this series. I think they have like all of the beautiful hardcover copies of the series. I don't know if you can tell, but the covers are gorgeous. I love this design. I'm really excited to find out how this kind of ties into the book. Their rave reviews, as well as the illustrations and the general gist of the book, really caught my eye. This is the first installment to the Mirror Visitor series, which follows Ophelia as she must navigate the lies and machinations of her fiance's clan in order to survive. Again, going off of vibes, and I think I'm really going to enjoy this one. So the next book I would like to read before the end of the year is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. If you didn't hear me talk about this earlier in a vlog or a haul video, one of the two, this was on sale at the Barnes & Noble sale, and I remembered seeing this title before because my really good friend Riv had published a rave review for this book. This is a sci-fi fantasy, I think urban sci-fi. It features queer and trans Asian characters, which is very exciting. Regardless of what the plot is, I think I'm really going to enjoy this for the representation alone. And again, my really good friend Riv, who honestly we agree on most of our book reviews, if she says that this is really good, I'm probably going to really enjoy this as well. Another book that I hauled recently that I also want to finish before the end of the year is Piranesi by Susana. I mentioned before that Elias from Elias Reads loved this book so much that he named his cat after it, and that kind of like really sparked my interest. But I've been hearing a lot of good and bad things about this book for some time now. It's a high fantasy, and you're supposed to apparently go into it knowing absolutely nothing. Apparently that enhances the reading experience. So again, I don't know anything about it, and I'm going to try to go into it knowing as little as possible. So I just want to tell you that I will hopefully, well, I'm hoping to read this by the end of the year. The next book that I want to read by the end of the year is the first in a few of the books on this list that are either continuations or the ends of series that I have started previously and want to continue with and just keep up with the publication pace of. And the first is going to be The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri. This is the sequel to The Jasmine Throne, and I think the second of 3 books in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, but this is a South Asian inspired high fantasy. It's sapphic. The first book was freaking fantastic. It had the most wonderful political intrigue and this incredibly complex story going on with so many characters. On the surface, it should kind of scare you in terms of how much stuff is going on, but I think Tasha Suri handles it so beautifully and really holds your hand through the story so well that you are just hooked from the start. Personally, I at least was hooked from the start. So I'm super excited to see how the story continues for Nalini and Priya, especially with the end of the first book, and I just hope that this lives up to my expectations and dazzles me like the first book did. Alright, the next book that I would like to read before the end of the year, that's another sequel, and I believe the end to a duology, is Godslayers by Zoe Hanamakuta. I recently hauled this beautiful signed copy. I didn't keep the bookmark in it, but it came with a bookmark too. And this is very exciting because I was on the PR team for the very first book, which released in 2021, and now we're kind of coming full circle and having me read the end of the series, and I'm super excited. This is a YA sci-fi fantasy with mechas and queer girls, and honestly, like I said in the previous video, that's all you really need to know. So I'm super excited to wrap up the series with Godslayers. The next sequel, and also I think this is the end of a duology once again, that I would like to read is A Dragon's Promise, or The Dragon's Promise by Elizabeth Lim. This is the sequel to Six Crimson Cranes, which I think I read earlier this year, if not last year, with Veronica and Justine. We are all big fans of Elizabeth Lim's writing. I loved Spin the Donna and Unravel the Dusk. It's not everyone's favorite, but personally I loved it, and I somehow loved Six Crimson Cranes more. I think that Elizabeth Lim's writing and her world building is just so magical and so much fun, and I'm so excited for the sequel to Six Crimson Cranes because I did love it so much. And this one hopefully features more of the dragon, because it's called The Dragon's Promise, but I'm super excited for it because I just loved the chemistry, I guess, between the main character Shiori and the dragon from the last book, so I'm really excited to see more of them in this one. I think Justine and Veronica have already read this, so they're a bit ahead of me, so I need to catch up before the end of the year. The next book on this list should come as no surprise to anyone who truly knows me, but it is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is pretty much a lot of people's most anticipated release of the year. This is an urban fantasy set in ye olde days of Oxford, and I think the gist is that language and words are sort of the magic system, and it talks about being an immigrant and racism in academia, which I'm very familiar with, so I'm very excited for that. And of course I really do love R.F. Kuang's fantasy writing, so I'm very excited to tackle this. It is a big chunky boy, but it is giving me all of the spooky, warm, dark academia vibes, and I am ready for it. The next book that I would like to read before the end of the year is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This was released earlier this year and is the first book in this is the first book in the Sansi trilogy, and I have heard nothing about good things about this book. It is blurbed by Andrea Stewart, C.L. Clarke, Shelley Parker Chan, all authors that I've read from before, and well, with the exception of She Who Began the Sun, I really enjoyed their work, so I can imagine that I'm going to love this just as much. The last book on my end of the year TBR is A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. If you missed my haul video from the trip to San Diego indie bookstores that I made, this is a book that I got signed from Mysterious Galaxy Bookstores. I originally was waiting for the paperback, but when I saw that it was signed, I was like, I think it's worth getting the hardback. So this is a young adult fantasy romance, I believe, and it's giving me Ava Reid vibes. It's giving me, you know, spooky end of the year vibes. So I think this is really going to complement the kind of mood that I get in the end of the year, where I want to be all like cozy and cuddled up, and the fact that it's like a fantasy romance is really intriguing me, so I'm very excited to read this. So every goddamn time. These are the books I would like to read by the end of the year. So it looks like it's a very big stack, but in case you've been keeping up with me reading, for some reason at the end of the year, every single year for the past few years, I just start reading like a maniac. So I am somewhat confident that I will be able to get to all of these books by the end of the year on top of my fall TBR, just because I have been in such a reading mood lately, whether that's constantly listening to audiobooks or using all of my free time to sit down here and read. So I am very happy, as you can tell, and I only wish that you who are watching this also experiences a bookish renaissance in a way. all you want to do is read and all you get to do is finish the books that you want to finish before the end of the year, I am manifesting that for you. Alright, so that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys so much as always for tuning in. I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Bye!